Hey there, folks. This is the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. In today's episode, we go over exactly who we are, why we write, what got us into writing, and why you should write too. I must admit, I am a little inebriated right now, but nowhere as I was when we recorded this episode. So I thank you for listening, and forewarning, there is strong language ahead. Enjoy. Hello, folks. Welcome to the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. I'm your host and the Drunken Pen Writing Editor-in-Chief, Caleb James. With me today is my co-host and the Associate Editor of Drunken Pen Writing, Spencer Church.
Hello.
Today, this is our inaugural episode, so I decided we would discuss why we write and why you should write. Because, after all, that's what we're all about. Now, what are we drinking? What do you got there, Spencer?
What's the name of this that we're throwing down here now?
Got a fine Highland Park 12 Viking Honor Edition.
Anything Vikings worth drinking on, you know.
That was my reasoning behind buying it. A single malt Scotch whiskey at 43% alcohol by volume. Now, I'm not much of a Scotch guy normally. I'm more of a bourbon and sometimes a rye fan, but you can't go wrong with a good Scotch.
It doesn't make you feel fancy drinking it, like.
Oh, you have the nice little tulip crystal glasses and...
The only thing we're missing are, like, huge cigars, like.
Yeah, need gigantic cigars, but that'll probably turn to blunts, and before you know it, we got our Rastafarian vibe going on.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all. Also, we are brought to you by the word of the day, and the word of the day is boisterous, which means of a person, event, or behavior, noisy, energetic, and cheerful, rowdy. Well, we are a rowdy bunch.
Sounds like us.
Yeah, rowdy. I think more like sexual deviant.
Well, that wasn't part of the word of the day. Like, maybe next week.
Well, seeing as this is our first episode, I figure a good idea would be to discuss who we are and what we do. For the fans who haven't followed us over the last year, we created Drunken Pen Writing just as a means to share work. Because I found, at least in my personal life, I did a lot of freelance work for a few years, and you get paid dick for the most part. You do a lot of writing about articles and whatnot that you don't enjoy, and then it's always one job to the next, and it's just not very fun. And I got sick and tired of doing that, so I started getting more serious about like fiction writing, and as I did that, I went into submitting to various publications and trying to just get my name out there. The problem with the fiction publications and the literary publications, they look for a specific type of people generally. It's a hard racket to get into at first when you don't have a name. So I wanted to create a website where lesser known or unknown authors can have a little shine, you know? Try to get your name out there, have a place to show your work and a forum where people could find out more about you, instead of like a lot of these literary publications, you have to pay to submit work, which I think is bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you're paying for a reading fee, and who's to say these people, they read the first paragraph, they don't enjoy it, or it's not what they like, they're done.
Yeah.
And you spent $20 or $5 or whatever it is, it's not right. So Drunken Pen Writing is all about celebrating writers, and not just writers. We do a lot of stuff with comics and artists and different creators. And it's just good to give...
Storytelling, basically.
Yeah, storytelling. That's what we like. Good storytelling.
In any form.
Exactly. And you just want to give people just that chance. I started writing at a young age. So I remember my mom gave me like an old typewriter in middle school.
That sounds cool.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely interesting.
Yeah. Clink.
It was definitely more writerly. But... the problem with that was, like, in middle school, everyone was starting to get computers.
Yeah.
So...
Do you wish you had it now? Could you imagine trying to write, like, a story on it now?
It's a pain in the ass to edit.
Oh, yeah.
But back then, we would have assignments for school, and they would just write it on their computers at home, print it out. Well, here, I fucking had to type it up, edit it, and then you have to retype it up again or use whiteout. Now, I did eventually get a fancier typewriter that had a whiteout button.
Ooh.
You hit it and it smeared white out on it, and then you could write over it. It looked like shit, but it got the job done. What that taught me, you had to choose your words carefully, and you really had to build your vocabulary and spelling.
Oh, that's why typewriters would be terrible for me. Is my spelling is atrocious. I always have to go back and fix things after I get done with like the first draft of the story. So like typewriting would be terrible for me.
I think the downfall of the American writer, and probably other places too, but it definitely seems like American writers suffer from this the worst. Fucking spell check.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's nice. Like for me, if I'm in a zone and I got a good writing streak going on, I'll hammer through a page or a couple chapters or whatever it is, like how good the zone is, and I don't look back.
Yeah, you just get it out there. You just page it out.
That's what you want to do. But at the same time, when you go back, you see all those red lines. You just hit the button and it changes to the right word. You don't have to learn how to spell it.
Oh yeah.
Like for me, guarantee is a word I misspell all the time. Restaurant, for some reason, I always get wrong. And then necessarily, I just recently finally learned how to spell that properly. But at the same time, you can't beat the convenience of it. Because, the old typewriter days, ding, 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 ding. And then, ching, slapped it back and forth. And you just go through, then you have to rewrite. Like I said, it builds up your vocabulary, your grammar, your spelling.
It's kind of like deadlifting for writing.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to do it,
but it's good for you.
Yeah,
it's really good for you.
It builds up your skills because you have to pay attention to what you're doing. You have to pay attention to the mechanics, which a lot of writers don't do anymore. That's why you get so many shitty spellers out there.
And imagine, like, too, the way you set up a sentence or, like, anything like that because of the hassle of trying to have to fix rewrite it is,
You have to really watch what you're doing. I think a good combination between computer and typewriter is freehand writing.
Yeah.
You write by freehand, you can at least erase it unless you're doing it by pen, but then you can just scribble it out.
Hopefully you have the handwriting for that.
I do not. My handwriting is atrocious, and I often can't read what I wrote, and that's printing too. When I fucking actually write cursive, it's terrible. Because I like writing in notebooks.
Yeah.
Especially when I'm just on the road, because I used to write on Google Docs on my phone.
Yeah.
And that's nice, but there's just something different about writing by hand. You get a better flow, I feel. Because texting, just...
And just try to tap it out with your thumbs.
Yeah.
Other than having, like, a pen or a pencil in your hand. And just going at the speed of your mind.
Yeah, then you have the autocorrect, so you always get, oh, he ducked her so hard. Ooh, they're just ducking all night long.
That's not what I meant.
That is not what I meant, and you know it, Samsung.
You should know by now.
Son of a bitch. I do find that the writing by freehand... It just exhausts me, though.
Oh, yeah,
I get a page in and my hand's sore, and I was never good at freehand writing. I always hated it. And I know guys like Stephen King, I think maybe Neil Gaiman did it a lot, too, was a lot of longhand writing before he would write anything else.
Maybe just get, like, the basic gist of the story and then go into the typing.
Yeah, and Stephen King's interesting because him and, I think, Dean Koontz both still use old word processors. Or at least Dean Koontz does. I don't know if Stephen King finally, because his eyes, he might have finally had to upgrade.
I know there for a long time he was like using like a processor, like kind of like old typewriter.
Old black screen with green font.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. You know what I actually can't imagine? Because my first computer I got, my cousin owned a bookstore that was next to my house, which was cool growing up. That's kind of where my love of reading came from, because I'd go over there and get cheapo books for a nickel or something, because she didn't charge me full price ever. Yeah. But she had an old store system computer, which was just basic, I don't know, I guess some kind of inputting stuff. Just the most basic, big black, like I said, black screen, green text. And, she ended up giving it to me when she got a new one. So I was writing on there, but there wasn't anywhere to save it. Yeah. So you're just creating stories, and then they just get deleted. I think one good part of my childhood was reading and writing. Yeah. Because a lot of people, they don't do that anymore.
Nope. That's why, I always try to get my, one of the main reasons is I always try to get my friends, kids, into, the comic book related stuff is because that's, an easy in to get them into reading. See, so even if after they get a little bit older, if they kind of are not into the comic book stuff as much, at least that my goal is to have them then to at least have like that reading bug to where they can then go on and read and other stuff as they get older. That'd be like Harry Potter or as I would maybe like, you know, into the Stephen King stuff or whatever it may be.
You built that foundation.
Yeah, like I always like to see that the kids are like, you know, my friends' kids are reading, because I know for me being young, I was not a very big reader. It was difficult for me to read when I was whenever I was younger. I didn't get into reading until I was like freshman, sophomore into high school. Like have the kids read.
Starting young is just it's almost like learning a second language. It's a lot harder if you start when you're older.
Yeah,
because I know a lot of people who their New Year's resolutions always I'm gonna read more, and they never read more. Like for me, I was lucky enough, like I said, the bookstore next door. Then I feel like we were kind of blessed in the terms of we didn't have, like, computers weren't as popular. There was no cell phones.
Yeah, we were at the very
we're the in between generation.
We're at that very end before like the huge technology boom. So
books were still a means to create stories in your head. I feel like 90s had some of the best imagination as far as cartoons, books, comics, and you just don't see that anymore. I mean, there is a little bit of a resurgence because I've noticed, like, you'll see more around towns and stuff, especially like my line of work. I'm always driving around, so I always see those library things, those boxes where people can exchange books for free. Yeah. Like, that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I've dropped books off in there. I'd never take a book. I always just drop one off if I have extra books I don't need. Because I figured, what the hell? But any kids that get into that, you can't hate on it.
Yeah. Because, I mean, like, especially, like, how you're talking about, like, with, like, during the 90s, like, with, like, the cartoon stuff. Like, what beats Nickelodeon during the early to mid-90s? Nothing.
No.
Nothing. Rocko's Modern Life.
You had Angry Beavers.
Oh, man, dude, that was one.
Stimpy.
Even stuff like Aura Monsters and, like, Cat Dog.
You had cartoons with adult themes that didn't warp kids' minds or anything.
No.
Because that's what they fear now is kids, they're so sensitive, they can't handle adult. You ever watch a kid show now?
Oh, it's mind-numbing.
It makes you feel stupid. You
hurts.
watch it, it's like they talk you through every little thing. As you said, great storytelling. There's no great storytelling in cartoons anymore.
Nope.
Like Stephen King said, when you start like a sentence or a story or whatever it is, you want to write it so you start it, but it finishes in the reader's imagination.
Yeah.
Cartoons now don't do that anymore. Because I remember I would used to watch cartoons, and I would create stories of what could happen in my head during the commercial break or things like that. Like, what's gonna happen? Who knows? But now there's none of that.
Mm-hmm.
You watch
even in like modern just normal shows nowadays. It's very cut and dry. Just like we'll walk through. This is another case of whatever's going on. There's hardly ever any originality or like surprise when it comes to anything. Like how often you watch something, you're like, you know, during the commercial break, you turn to your girlfriend and you're like, this is what's going to happen, and that's what happens.
Yeah, that's all the time. I mean, it used to be storytelling was more like the Twilight Zone, things like that. Storytelling, especially you watch old movies, it was all dialogue heavy, and it was about the story getting pushed forward. And that's why we still remake movies and TV shows from 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Because we can't think of anything new that
It's very bizarre because we still have talented writers out there, but their work, they're not getting made into movies or TV shows or anything. What people look for is just the same old shit.
Yeah.
They just keep rehashing the same things that make them money, and that's all they care about. That's why when you get shows like Black Mirror, it's such a breath of fresh air, and they do so well. It's because people are like, oh, hey, there's still original ideas out there that haven't been touched on yet.
And, like, crazy off-the-wall, like... Because Black Mirror is, like, this generation's, like, Twilight Zone.
Oh, definitely. A technological version of Twilight Zone. It's one of my favorite shows. I mean, I've gotten a lot of ideas... Because all writers steal ideas.
Oh, yeah. Or you get it inspired by something.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, you're technically borrowing them, but you turn them into your own. Because everything's been done for the most part.
That or how many times you see, like, you know, you watch an episode or something, and, like, it could be, like, a small part of that episode, but whatever that is, it's, like, that they totally just leave behind, and you're like, oh, what about if they took that and went this way with that, and instead of going that way, they
just
did
change it up,
this,
yeah.
And like, you know, next thing you know, you got your next short story or something, like, you know, or
well,
like
that's why I always think it's fucking asinine when you get people that scoff, oh, I don't ever watch TV. It's like, well, what do you do exactly? Well, I don't watch TV, I don't watch movies, or even the people that, I just read books. Well, that's cool and all, but I get a lot of great ideas. I mean, I don't watch a lot of TV, but I've gotten a lot of great ideas just from different TV shows. Or I mean, who hasn't been inspired to come up with a cool monster story from X-Files?
Right, like,
or I mean, Twilight Zone's a great example. Like you said, Black Mirror. There's so many stories to be told, but you could take stories that have been told already and make them your own.
Cause and I can't remember what they were, but don't they say there's only like 7 basic stories you can tell?
Yeah, something
anyway,
like pretty much.
that. And I like we do have no you know, we kind of do this off the cuff, so there's like no. I can't remember what those exactly are. I'm sure you can find those. You know, if
you
you're
always
interested.
have your
like your comedies, your romance.
Yeah, but you always have your classic hero adventure.
Yep.
Your the hero's journey. You have your anti-heroes. I mean, and then everything. You have your romance and the basic love. Pretty much everything Shakespeare's ever done.
Yeah,
He pretty much created him and he's created like every pretty much storytelling device. And then like Don Quixote was, I think, the first real novel that had like the hero's journey. I never read Don Quixote, but that's one of the most popular and first novels ever written. But just between those two,
really digging your drink over there.
you can't. That's my problem.
I think you're gonna need another glass, sir.
The alcoholic problem. Yeah, just fill up the tulip glass to the top.
All the way.
Let me tell you something, you piece of shit. Writing, if you ain't writing, you ain't cool. And if you ain't cool, you can go suck a bag of dicks. My mom doesn't like when I tell her that.
Just suck a bag of dicks? I mean, yeah, I could see that.
Finds that offensive.
Is that like how if you ever like text her, is that just how you end every text? Just like, suck a bag of dicks.
Yeah, I love you, Mom. I hope you have a good week. I'll suck a bag of dicks.
Like, ah.
Why do you keep telling your mom to suck a bag of dicks? Well, how the fuck do you think I came about? Clearly, she's making good decisions. Well, and we discussed my intro to writing and why. I don't know if we discussed why I want to be a writer. Before we get to that, what about you?
As I stated a little bit earlier, like, I had a hard time reading it as a child, so I didn't get into it later until I started to get into the comic books. And then, so I got really heavy into that. And then, like, I've always been, like, a Stephen King fan, but never read any of his actual work.
Just like the movies and stuff based on his work.
And just kind of like the dude, like, and, you know, and all the stuff that, like, he, you know, stuff he always talked about and kind of what he stood for. And then, while I was still in high school, Marvel started to adapt his Dark Tower series into different miniseries. So I was like, well, if I'm going to check these out, I should probably read the source material from it. And so that's how I got started, and
So you started with the Dark Tower?
Yeah, probably the worst way to get into Stephen King's work is to just start at the Dark Towers and then read
giant sprawling epic.
And then just read everything else that ties into it, because like a lot of his work have like some has bigger influences into it, some have little, but like you know you see it like as you read, you're like, oh, that kind of ties into that, or you know, that character was there and stuff like that. So I kind of did it ass backwards, but you know, that's how I do things most of the time.
Well, that's like over last year I've been reading a lot of Japanese novels. I got into the work of Haruki Murakami, and I think the first novel of his I read was 1Q84, which is technically 3 books in one.
Yeah, I remember.
It's the most gigantic novel that I think he's written. And then I read, and I really liked it, but after that I read, that is not the introductory novel to his work you want to get into. It's like one of the last ones you should read.
Save that to the end.
Yeah, so I always do the same thing. I always read like the hardest, the most difficult work of an author. Like James Joyce, I remember like one of the first ones I tried to get into was Finnegan's Wake, and then I realized it was unreadable. So I haven't read any. I tried Ulysses, or not Ulysses. Dubliners too, and it's just I can't understand what's happening.
And well, you're also good for just diving headfirst into like huge collections like H.P. Lovecraft and like Edgar Allan Poe and like all that classic literature. I haven't really read much of that.
Usually when I read an author's work or I get into an author, I'll read a collection of their work. So like the H.P. Lovecraft, I read so many of the stories at once, and my head started to melt because it was just too much.
So much Cthulhu.
Oh man, it was the whole mythos. Yeah, that's what always happens to me. Like recently I got into John Steinbeck, so I started reading. I just ordered a short story or a short novel collection he has too, but I read 3 of his novels already. I think there's like 5 short ones or something that's in the collection. But I find usually that's a good way to go about it. You can read a whole author's work or like at least their main one.
Yeah.
And then
you can
move on to the next one.
Switch back and forth. So, because sometimes whenever you do steady read like the same author and stuff like that, sometimes it does get like not. I don't want to say stale, but like you're just sometimes you need that switch up.
Yeah, you can't
and
have
you
the same
read
style.
something else for a little bit, and then you can come back and then you can really appreciate it again.
Well, like Steinbeck, he's more of a simplistic writer, so
sounds like my kind of writer.
Yeah, you'd really like his work. But when you get into his work, like I read Grapes of Wrath, Mice and Men, and then East of Eden. And East of Eden's a pretty long book. It's like 600 pages or something. But what ends up happening is you kind of, like you said, you get a little burnout on them. So I went and read The Great Gatsby, which I somehow missed. I never read that in school for some reason. And then
because you went to because of the schools that you went to, they're not giving you that to read. Like
yeah, I don't remember reading books too much in school. We read The Red Badge of Courage and I don't even remember what else.
You know what I remember most
Red Fern.
Remember what I remember most from schools are packets, work packets.
Yeah, I remember reading where the red fern grows and doing a work packet on it, and I hated it. Well, that's the problem. Public schools make kids hate reading.
Oh, yeah.
Let alone writing.
Well, because, like, I remember whenever I was in high school, we read, in English class, we read this really shitty, watered-down version of Beowulf, to the point to where I went to the bookstore.
To get the real one?
And kind of, like, and with that kind of stuff, it's kind of difficult because there's so many different, like, translations and things like that, but I tried to find the best so I could actually read the actual story, which was way better than what they gave us in the school to read.
Oh yeah, the schools ruin any kind of, even if it is a good book, they'll make it so you dislike it because they break it down and you have to write your report on it and all that stupid shit. But it's always like it's the teacher's opinion of the book usually.
Yeah.
So that's kind of biased as it goes. So if they don't like the book, but it's in their curriculum, they have to teach it every year. Then it's gonna be a miserable experience for the person reading it.
Or if they're just a shitty teacher,
which is
they don't know what they're talking about for the most part, or don't even really care.
In my whole career from kindergarten through high school, I had one good teacher, and he quit halfway through my semester. It was the English teacher, and I was like, "What the fuck?" He's the only one that actually cared about kids learning, made work fun. And then he got a job somewhere better, of course.
Oh yeah,
that's how it goes around.
Well, that's
here.
like what we're talking about the school. Like most of my classes, like each year I'd have like 4 or 5 art classes, and if those classes that I didn't have, whenever I went to I had like a shitty social studies class where like during my senior year we actually had a decent teacher for history. He went like halfway through, he got a job being a principal down at the middle school. And then we got this shitty like sub teacher who literally we just watched movies in her class all day. And then so I would just lie and be like, "Hey, my art teacher needs me to come down to work on this project. Is that okay?" And she'd be like, "Yeah, sure, that's fine." And I walk in and my art teacher's like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, I just don't want to be in my class right now. Like all right. Which brings me back to not reading a lot. I never dreamt of trying to do any kind of writing whatsoever. My main focus was work on my art skills, try to be like a comic book artist or something, use that skill set for something. And so as I met Caleb later on in years for work, just at work, and he started to try to get into the writing again, he'd asked if I'd try to do some artwork for some of the stories he was working on. So I do that, and as the website came into fruition, he was just like, hey, do you just want to try taking a crack at writing some stories?
Well, that's what I always tell people. Just give it a try.
Yeah.
Even if you don't think you'd be good at it, just try it out and see how you get. Like you ended up doing a whole short story, a serial story within a couple of months of starting.
Yeah. And what that thing's close to like a couple thousand words, wasn't it?
It was close to like 10,000 words.
Something.
It was a couple thousand words per entry.
Yeah, so like never would have thought that I would ever read anything that long. To now, what we look at the website and what we each have over like 100 different submissions on there and things like that.
We've published individually like probably close to 200 each. Which I mean, we still do personal writing too outside of the website. So like for me, a lot of times I'll do a flash fiction piece like the night before we have the day scheduled, which is usually Friday. So I'll write something before just to get it out there, and it's great at writing exercise. I love doing it. And like the one thing you can't beat with the website is it keeps you accountable.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of what I was hoping the podcast would do too, is we come up with different story ideas and stuff. It'll make you want, when you have readers interested in what you're writing, you want to keep doing it.
Especially considering how we've been able to carve out a nice little niche of followers pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Like a lot quicker than what I thought we would have. So like as you said, like you have these people who not only reading them, but then also will like give us feedback either on the website or whenever we post that on social media of how they liked the story or didn't like the story and stuff like that. So it does kind of also motivate you and like to do more and to be like now people are actually reading this. I should probably actually try to get some stuff done. Like Yeah,
it just makes you want to work harder. And I mean, what people don't know is we were working on coming up with comics and different things way prior to coming up with the website, but we were still learning how to write.
Yeah.
I mean, we were learning,
which is something we still kind of want to try to later on take a crack at, just to, as a check it off of the box to do.
Like our shitty education system, I don't remember anything from English class. I had to pretty much teach myself, because when I was growing up and I would write stuff, I would just write stuff almost emulating what I read.
Yeah.
It wasn't, so I didn't know the writing mechanics too much. And I had to teach myself all that over. Then what really helped me was all the freelance work I did.
Yeah.
Because I had editors that showed me proper ways to do things. And that was actually very beneficial. Even though the writing was kind of boring and the pay wasn't very good.
How long did you do those fitness articles for?
A couple years.
Yeah, you did those for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I did the one website I wrote for... Now, it might have been close to 2 years for that website, and then I did the other one, which is a more professional site, which also, that's how I end up creating this website, because I never learned how to any kind of website creation in school or anything. So when it came to wanting to start this, I used the knowledge I learned from how the fitness site I was working on was set up, like when we used Trello and all that stuff, and how to get people to follow you and read all that stuff, like especially the social media stuff too. We kind of winged it all, but at least I had that knowledge set from previous work. Anyway, one of the things though, I always try to get people to try their hand at writing. I mean, I do it through Twitter, when I talk to people, and when I meet people. Like when we get submissions, like when we talk to a lot of comic book creators, even like the artists and stuff, or the short stories, or whatever we get when people, especially when we have our contests and stuff, I always tell people, why don't you try your hand at flash fiction? Why don't you do this and try that? And
even if you're not looking to try to make a career or anything out of it, it's just a good stress reliever, and just to get either, because you can write a story about the asshole at work or just whatever you're feeling about, it's just a good way to kind of just get some of that out of you so you're not dealing with it anymore.
Yeah, you're not holding it in. Well, that's one thing a lot of writers or aspiring writers seem to have a problem with, is they think you're either Stephen King or you're nothing.
Yeah.
Like you have to find a way to become super successful and have crazy amount of readers and be real popular, or it's for nothing.
Yeah.
And that's the worst way to get into writing. You should not get into writing because you want to make money, or, I mean, sure, that's a factor, because Like, I don't know about you, but for me, my dream job would be to be a writer.
Yeah,
just live off of writing.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be really nice.
And not like a journalist or a newspaper, because I thought about working like for a magazine or something, or even more freelance work, but it's just, it becomes a job. And when writing becomes a job, it's not enjoyable.
Nope.
When you get paid for fiction and it's your creative endeavor, even if you're not making a lot of money, it's more satisfying than working a job that you make a lot of money but you just hate it.
And I mean, like, and how many people do we meet at conventions who have, like us, just kind of cut out their, like, this kind of core audience of people, and, like, granted, they might not be selling, like, 20 or 30 issues on, like, any consistent basis, but, like, a lot of them are doing it enough and having enough product go out to where they can do that as the living. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They're not working, like, the job, like how we're working the 40-hour job week and then trying to get this stuff done.
Well, that's what a lot of people don't see when it comes to our work particular is, and this is most writers or aspiring writers. We work full-time jobs. It's not like we're just dicking around and, you know, maybe work 16 hours a week or something and have all this free time. No, we work full-time jobs and then come home, and the writing's the extra stuff. And that's the biggest trick of all, is turning, when you want to become a professional writer, is that middle part where you're still working and you have to work to make the money, but you also have to double up on the writing.
Well, I think you'd be surprised, like, if you looked into it, how many professional, quote-unquote professional writers
still work full-time
still have some kind of full-time job, because you figure
the publishing industry doesn't pay a lot.
And then too, you know, you got insurance, so you got to take care of yourself or your family members and stuff like that. So it's just like, that's one of the most difficult parts about the whole writing thing.
That's another thing. A lot of writers, it's almost like a myth. It's, I'll catch that big break and then I'll get rich.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. I mean, Stephen King worked how long? And then he was a teacher, a janitor. He was all these different things before he caught his supposed big break with Carrie.
Yeah.
And
then even after that, like, I think in like a good like 5 or 6 books into his that he was still teaching. Like,
well, yeah, because he wasn't. I mean, he made good money from like Carrie, but it takes a while. And where the money comes from, people don't understand. It's even if you got $10,000 for like an advance, $10,000 to $15,000, which is good for a new writer.
Yeah,
if you got
I'd take it.
Yeah, you think, oh hell yeah, big fucking payday. Not really. Say you write a full novel in 10 months, spend another 6 months editing it.
And then shopping it.
And then you have to shop it. You're looking at 2 to 3 years for this novel. And that's assuming you have an agent and you find a publication that'll accept your work. And then when you send it to the publisher, they have an editor that'll go through. And then you have to
rewrite.
Another revision.
And whatever else they want done with it.
So by the time the book comes out, sure, you made $10,000, $15,000 on an advance. And whatever amount of royalties you might get and stuff is fine. But again, if you're getting paid in royalties, which is usually a shit, you get shit royalties compared to what the publisher makes, you're also getting fucked because you have to do all the marketing.
Yeah.
And that's big name publishers. You catch that supposed break with one of the big 5 publishers, you're doing all the marketing on your own book.
Yeah.
So.
And that's just going to be super tough as well. You're still trying to break in, like.
Yeah, and you're working a full-time job still, and then now you have to do, assuming you want to write another book.
Like, I hate that we always use him as an example, but like, say with like Stephen King, he can throw out one tweet saying in like how in 4 months I got a new book coming out, and that thing's already pre-sold.
Yeah.
Thousands of copies, like, but he's been doing it since like the 70s.
It's been forever.
And like, you know, he has a body of work over like 60 books by now, like.
Well, where the money lies too, like Stephen King. Technically, I mean, he's a best-selling author, so he gets a lot of money from that. But still, I think
a lot of
money came from
movies. Yeah, I think that helped out a lot.
You sell the movie rights, and that's where you get the money. And and then also if you have a series, like, well, obviously Harry Potter was a popular series before it became a movie series.
But those movies made all the money.
Mm-hmm. But J.K.
And then
Rowling
sold more books.
Yeah.
Made it so, like, you know, the books that was jumped up because of the movies too. Like,
that's exactly what helps. Like The Martian.
Yeah.
I read The Martian when I found out it was becoming a movie.
Yep.
And I was like, that looks good. And I read the reviews. I was like, I want to fucking read this. And it was an awesome book.
And then you told me. I checked it out.
Yeah,
thought it was awesome.
But you know how Andy Weir wrote The Martian? He wrote it on a website he created, kind of like what we do with installments when we do a series, or like a serial series. That's what he did. He wrote it in installments, and people gave him feedback, and then it was popular enough that he ended up selling it. But he was like a scientist or something to start.
Yeah.
Like he didn't. That wasn't his job. He didn't really necessarily want to be a writer. That was his hobby. But like J.K. Rowling, she was dirt poor.
Yeah.
I think she got rejected like 150 times or something.
Oh yeah.
And it was like a fluke like thing that got her to get published because some guys, he actually let his kid read the book. No one else did that. He let the kid read the manuscript, and the kid loved it, and that's how Harry Potter came to be.
Makes sense. I mean,
but obviously I think she was a school teacher too or something.
Well, I mean, like if you go to like the backstory of like any of the great writers, how many of it is just like them just like I remember Stephen King with like, and I think it was on How to Write, he talked about like how he just had like this clipboard full of rejection letters that he just kept there.
He said he had to get a new nail.
He nailed them onto the wall.
And he had to get a new nail because they were stacked out so far it ripped the nail out.
Yeah, it's to kept them there as he wrote, to, as motivation and try to get it done. Like,
well, so many writers think they're going to be on E.L. James with the 50 Shades of Grey. That's a fluke.
Yeah.
She's an outlier. That doesn't happen very often. I mean, you even go back in time. Look at Ernest Hemingway. I think he was a journalist at some point before, and he went to the war and World War I and different things like that. And he was an ambulance driver in World War I, and he got injured, and that's what gave him the ideas for his stories. But it was all about experience for him before he ever wrote anything. Like F. Scott Fitzgerald, he's one of the most famous writers in history, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't doing very well when he started. He didn't even have any confidence in his own writing.
I'm sure there's still because wasn't Poe? Nobody really liked his stuff till after he was dead, right?
Well,
or till he was close to being dead.
He was the first famous writer after The Raven came out.
Yeah.
But before that, I think he worked for newspapers and whatnot. But he was the first writer in American history that made a living from writing.
Oh, really?
I believe so.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, then I think you had your Mark Twains and Charles Dickens and stuff. But as far as writing and then just becoming instant success, that just doesn't happen.
No.
But so many writers I talk to, I see them shopping, or even on Twitter, I see them posting different things for their work and stuff, and I try to share whenever I see somebody's work that is good and I feel people should read. But they get so defensive if you critique their work or try to give them ideas on how to make things better, because they feel like they should just, it's like this sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
I don't know when this started, but it's definitely in the last 20 years I've noticed. One, people think they should get books for free.
Yeah.
They think they shouldn't have to pay for writing. Two, writers think they should get paid ridiculous sums of money before they're proven. And you combine that together, so you... I mean, how are you getting the money to pay these writers if nobody wants to buy the work anyway? And then these writers who've never had anything published think they should come out as a best-selling author. It's just, there's something missing there. People don't want to do the work first.
No.
They don't want
to put in the time.
They don't want to do the grind. They don't want to work the full-time job and then write on the side and build it up. They don't want to do any. They just want to skip straight to instant success.
Because as we talked before, or if you have happened to read anything from the website we've mentioned a couple of times, if you want to try to make a go at writing for real, it is that second job. That's the kind of time and effort you have to put into it, A
40-hour work week turns into an 80-hour work week if you're serious with writing.
Yeah.
And that's, it sounds awful when you put it that way, because who wants to work 80, and then you have kids on top of that, or a family.
If you just want to, eat or sleep, even,
But you have to be willing to put in that work if you really want to make it.
Yeah.
And too many people don't want to put in the work. They just want to make it without that. And that's why there's so many aspiring writers, but not that many professional writers.
Yep.
And what I feel has been a real detriment to the writing community, it's great in the sense that, self-publishing, it's great in the sense that you can get your work out, especially if you already built your own audience. But for people that don't have that audience built up, I think it's terrible because
yeah, it's a real crapshoot because you don't know who's gonna.
I know so many people who spent the money. And I mean, it's cheap, but it's not that cheap.
No.
If you do it well, because you want to get a professional cover, you still want to get it professionally edited. You're looking at a minimum $1,500 to do this.
Yeah.
And you do the print on demand, and then you have people who print this out with no audience, and they don't sell anything, and then
you
they give up.
You get stuck with boxes in your garage or attic for who knows how long.
Yeah.
You can make forts out of them.
Well, how many people have we seen at Comic Cons who will put in the work as far as going to every Comic Con, traveling around, paying for this and that, but their work is garbage.
Yeah, I always, like, whenever it comes to, like, our articles or even, like, the short stories that I write, like, I'm always for, like, if you have a question about something or a critique,
let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I might not always take it to heart, but I'm always interested in to hear what it is. Like, because sometimes you might have a valid point, sometimes you might not, but I'm always interested to at least hear what it is.
Well, I always feel to truly reach your potential and talent as a writer, you have to put your ego aside.
Yeah.
You can't have an ego and also be an amazing writer, unless you're Shakespeare or something. Like, there's only certain levels of writer who are just great, no matter what.
Just right out the chute. Like.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, those are geniuses.
Yeah.
And even then, a lot of those people have problems.
Mm.
And you try to give them a critique. Because you know how many... like, Alan Moore's a good example. Like that Jerusalem book he wrote. I haven't read it yet, but it's sprawling and super long. And the main complaint is it can be... Because I think it's like... What is it? 3,000 words or something crazy. The main complaint for that book is it could be a 500-word awesome novel.
Yeah.
That he just spread out because his ego... What did somebody say? He looted the thesaurus? Like he just went through finding every word.
That sounds like Alan Moore.
Yeah.
If you don't know the guy, that sounds like him.
And I've read samples of it, and you can just tell that the editor, whoever his editor was...
Just didn't want to get in his way.
Well, they probably said, hey, here's changes, and he just said... Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Sell it or don't sell
it. I'm a warlock.
Yeah.
I do what I want.
I'm Alan Moore. I have name recognition. This is my masterpiece. And you know what? A lot of people say it's really suffers because of that.
Which that whole warlock thing, again, if you don't know, Google Alan Moore. He's supposedly a trained
wizard.
Yeah, he's a wizard or a warlock, however you want to phrase it.
Yeah, he's for
Guy's
real with the
a little
magic.
weird. Yeah.
He's very strange. Smart as fuck, but he is very strange.
That's how it normally goes.
But anyway... So we were saying, you can't have an ego to be a great writer. It doesn't go hand in hand.
Especially if you're still on the trying out stage.
Well, that's the main problem is you get new writers who have that ego before they've proven themselves at all. If you get a guy like Stephen King, he can say, I'm the greatest horror writer of all time. And, I mean, you could try to challenge him on it, but at the same time, the numbers are there.
Yeah.
But if he starts believing, I'm the greatest horror writer of all time, I could just phone it in from now on, people aren't going to buy his work anymore.
Yeah, no, it's just going to get bad.
Yeah, your quality goes down. You can't have that. When you stop taking criticism, when people critique you and you take it as personal attacks, you're not going to get anywhere. Like you said, you don't have to take all critiques as... You don't have to take them all to heart and, I got to change this, I got to do that, because some people just don't like certain writing styles. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I've read the work of writers where the work was awesome, but I just didn't like it. You can't please everybody, and that's fine, but you don't... Like, the only thing that I would say about bad critiques and good critiques is that you can give somebody advice on something, and if they take it and change, they might get better, but you can also be one of those assholes who just goes, you suck, you use...
Yeah.
Just... pretty much like personal attack and just shit on them, and that does nobody any good.
Yeah, that doesn't help anybody.
That's why you get so many writers who don't read their reviews at all.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't blame them, because if I had a novel come out that I really loved, I put my heart and soul into, and then I started reading the reviews, and you have some good reviews, but then you also have some who are just, this guy's a hack, he sucks. Everything he wrote is garbage because he believes in whatever the theme was.
Mm. And it's like, did you even read it? That's the worst. That's the worst when you get somebody complaining about something who doesn't read it, watch it, whatever it is that they're complaining about. My favorite
is, like, when I saw, when that Get Out movie came out, that movie, I watched it and I really liked it, but people thought it was just like a black power shit on white people movie.
Yeah.
And people did not watch the movie, and I would see so many times people commented, I didn't watch this movie and I'm not going to because, and then they go into this big critique. You can't criticize something you didn't watch.
Yeah.
That's like me saying, oh, I'm not going to go see Black Panther because that's probably just all about black power and shitty and it's not going to represent my ideas. Or like, how the fuck would I know?
Yeah, if you didn't see it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I don't believe that stuff anyway, but there are a lot of people out there who have these preconceived notions on something without seeing it, like Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
How many people shit on that movie because it starred a woman and it was about, like, there was a lot of anti-feminist people that were hating on it and didn't see it.
Yep.
Or the ones that saw it gave it a way lower ranking than what it was just because
it was a woman. It was a woman lead.
And, I mean, that goes both ways, too. How many times you see people... like they had that Gods of Egypt movie come out, and I heard that was terrible. I didn't see it. But
I haven't either, but I have nothing but terribleness on it.
Yeah, it looked terrible from just my opinion from the trailer. But when that came out, there was all the whitewashing stuff. Well, why are all the Egyptians white? Which I agree with. Why would Egyptians be white? That's stupid. But people didn't see the movie and still complained. You can't complain on something if you didn't see the movie. Like people who complain about, we have elections and people complain about the results of the elections when they didn't vote. That doesn't make sense. If you didn't contribute anything, if you weren't a part of it, you're kind of on the sideline. And that's what goes with writing. If somebody writes something and you didn't read it, you have no right to go in there and say, well, this sucks because so and so and so. It doesn't work. Well, I think we covered pretty much everything when it comes to why we write and why you should write. Like I said, this is our first episode, so future episodes are going to be, we'll do our writing tip episodes. We're going to have different subjects. What we really want to do is brainstorming sessions. So when we come up with stories, we'd love to be able to go over them on the podcast and have the listeners chime in.
Yeah. Or even if there's like, if there's something you think we should talk about, you should shoot us like an email or comment on something and let us know, because we're always looking for ideas for stuff. It makes it a lot easier for us.
Oh, definitely. And what we think you guys are going to like, we have planned random bullshit episodes, which is just us talking and, just talking shit and whatever.
I'm sure there'll be some writing things thrown into there, but it's going to be a lot of just...
And if you guys think, well, you're drunken pen writing, you talked about Scotch briefly, but we're going to have drunk cast episodes, and possibly every month or every week. We haven't decided. It depends how much our liver can handle. But we're going to have episodes strictly dedicated to us getting drunk and just blitzed and talking about stupid shit. So it'd be like the bullshit episodes, just drunken nonsense.
Drunken bullshit episodes.
That'd be a good title for the podcast.
It's kind of like going Super Saiyan 2. It's like get that little extra.
Yeah. Like, maybe we should change the name to the Drunken Bullshit Society. All right. Well, I think we covered pretty much everything. So what we'll leave you guys with is one of our... I think if it wasn't the first piece I wrote for the site, it was one of the first ones, and it was entitled Why We Write, which inspired this first episode. So I will end with a reading on that. And until next time, keep on writing. We'll keep on reading.
Have a good one.
Can one fall in love with the act of writing? That magical feeling of getting lost in one's own thoughts? If not love, then it's surely madness. Those can be the only two explanations for what possesses a writer to sit, hunched over, for hours on end until their whole body is stiff and numb, their souls drained and hearts aching. This is especially true for the unknown writer, the writer who writes for no one, the writer who writes so their mind can rest, even if it's just for a moment, without the barrage of ideas eating away at it, wrecking its ability to focus on any single task other than the story. Can this really be love? It seems more like an obsession. Sometimes telling the difference between the two is impossible. Most writers hate everything they put to the page, hating their own thoughts as it were. But does love not exist without hate? Perhaps it's the want, the absolute need to create that drives the writer. They need to write or they are finished, laid bare for all to see. Is this how one could hate writing while being so dependent on it? Certainly one could not be expected to sit and write if they did not enjoy anything about it. But if this is true, why are many writers so completely tortured? Or is it writing the only thing keeping them hanging on to that tiny piece of rope, the rope hanging from the edge of utter despair? Much like the writers themselves, the answers are varied and reclusive. One could dig and dig for 1,000 years, but the true answers would never be unearthed. One could write for love, or for fortune, or fame, or respect, or any number of reasons. But the most important thing in the world is that they write, that they put their obsession to paper, for this is the only real way to free the writer's mind, if only for